TIL Microsoft didn't develop MS-DOS, but bought it off a programmer named Timothy Paterson in 1981. If you have not seen Pirate of Silicon Valley 1999, you absolutely should. It is still one of the best origin movies about Silicon Valley that I've ever seen. It is well acted, charming, funny and witty. I like it better than The Social Network and definitely more than Jobs and Steve Jobs. Noah Wyle gives the performance of Steve Jobs to date. There's a scene that addresses the purchase of MS-DOS. 3D. Thank you for starting this fascinating thread. There's a similar story about how Steve Jobs and a couple of Apple engineers built the Lisa computer based largely on the Alto computer developed by Xerox. Seems marketing, packaging and promotion sometimes trumps engineering. Reminds me a little of the browser wars of the 90s. Sadly, it seems that sometime the inferior product comes out on top. Timothy Paterson's 86DOS was a clone of Gary Kildahl's CP/M. Bill Gates set up a meeting between IBM and Kildahl for IBM to buy CP/M, but the deal fell through. Microsoft was screwed if the IBM deal fell apart, so they went to Seattle Computer Products and bought the non-exclusive rights to 86DOS. Right before IBM's release, Microsoft bought the software outright for $50,000, now $175,000. Gary Kildahl could have been Bill Gates also. Gary Arlen Kildahl was an American computer scientist and microcomputer entrepreneur. During the 1970s, Kildahl created the CP/M operating system among other operating systems and programming tools, and subsequently founded Digital Research Incorporated to market and sell his software products. Dude was also on Computer Chronicles. Anyone can make a burger. The genius is in figuring out how to make billions of burgers and sell them all over the world, while making sure they're actually good enough for people to want to buy them at a price where you earn a profit. Many learning opportunities are thrown away when implying Microsoft buying DOS meant Bill Gates was a fool who got lucky and it didn't work. And it was never fixed. And then they built Windows 95 on top of it and I restarted my computer 8 to 10 times a day for the next 5 years. I'm still salty about all the time I wasted on shitty computers in the 90s. The last decent decade and I spent it troubleshooting Windows. Oh, nostalgia! My first ever PC that is mine runs on Windows for workgroups on top of MS-DOS 6.22. Back then, software comes in chunky boxes with chunky manuals. I miss those days, it makes collecting software fun. Also, I wish Microsoft would bring back Where Do You Want to Go Today? MS-DOS PC DOS installing. Way back, remove floppy A, insert floppy B, one floppy only installed track. The luxury of fixed disks, then of USB, decades of tech I recall. USB drivers installed from purchased CDRs straight from the mall. They bought those 86DOS from Seattle Computer Products. Paterson programmed it. It was created because of the need for an OS for the new 8086 chip, which would be part of SCP's new S100 board. Gates was a pretty shrewd businessman. He saw an opportunity and made money from it. This happens all the time in business. Businesses buy something or another company and sell the products. You guys should check out Dave's Garage. He's one of the original Microsoft devs, responsible for Task Manager and 3D Pinball, amongst other things. You mean you never saw the made-for-TV movie about Gates and Jobs starting out indirectly? Don't know if it's real or just a distant fever dream from the 90s. DR-DOS was far superior, but MS would make updates to their MS-DOS that threw a spanner in the compatibility, forcing people to rely on MS-DOS. The Pirates of Silicon Valley is an amazing film on Microsoft's rise to power, Gates and Jobs' friendship and ultimately them becoming enemies. A movie called Pirates of Silicon Valley brought this to light for me back in the day. Probably the most accurate thing I've ever watched. What I love about informatics is how all the great shit we now take for granted was made by a guy passionate about computers. Duh! Wait, I am now realizing. PPL think about Bill Gates and the way incels look at elongated muskrat Thomas Edison. It was called 86DOS, also DOS for quick and dirty operating system. Microsoft continued the tradition ever since. Before Microsoft created Internet Explorer, how did people get online to download other browsers? Thank you. Seems to be a lot of true tech heads getting trampled for their work. No wonder. Even more importantly, they sold it to IBM before they'd even bought it from Paterson. Yep. and reverse engineering of the IBM computer allowed MSFT to sell it everywhere. I kinda don't give a fuck tbh lol. Bill Gates helped advance humanity super fast, and both Microsoft and Apple stole the basis for their GUI OSs from Xerox. Obligatory. Everyone needs to watch Pirates of Silicon Valley. Microsoft as per usual has to buy their products and talent. That screenshot is from the command shell, not MS-DOS.